Okay, get ready because today we're going to look into something kind of interesting. Risky play for kids.
Risky play.
Yeah, letting them climb things, jump off things, even maybe get a little scraped up. It sounds a bit scary, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But what if I told you that encouraging a bit of risk in play could actually be good for kids?
hmm, that might seem a little counterintuitive, but more and more research is suggesting that letting kids do things with an element of risk is actually really important for how they develop.
That's what we're going to be looking at today, an article called Why Kids Need More Chances to Take Risks from a scientific publication.
Oh, interesting.
We'll break it down. Look at the good and the bad and see how we can apply this knowledge in our own lives, as parents, educators.
Yeah, makes sense.
What exactly is risky play, though? How do they define that in the article?
Well, they describe it as any activity that gives kids a thrill. You know, it has an element of uncertainty, and there's a real or perceived risk of physical injury.
So things like climbing a tall tree or jumping off a swing set.
Exactly. Stuff that most kids are naturally drawn to. But it's important to make that distinction between healthy risk and actual danger.
Yeah, where's the line?
The article really stresses that risky play pushes kids just outside their comfort zone, but it stays within a safe boundary. Think of it like this. When a toddler takes their first steps, that's risky, but we wouldn't call it dangerous, right?
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
It's about that sweet spot between challenge and safety.
So how does something like climbing a tree actually benefit a child? I mean, besides maybe getting some exercise.
Right. Well, there was a study from Belgium that found that just 2 hours a week of risky play really helped kids' risk assessment
Oh,
skills.
wow. So like they can better judge what's safe and what's not.
Yeah, think about a kid on a jungle gym. They're making all these little calculations. Can I reach that bar? Is this foothold stable? Those decisions help them assess risk in all parts of life.
Hmm, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way.
And it goes beyond just physical skills. Outdoor risky play has also been linked to less stress and anxiety in children.
Really? I would think all that risk would make them more anxious.
I know it seems counterintuitive, but when kids do risky play, they get that adrenaline rush. Their heart beats faster. By going through that cycle of challenge and excitement over and over, they learn that these feelings are temporary and they can handle them.
So it's like they build up a tolerance for those feelings.
Exactly. It's almost like emotional resilience training, which
Mhm.
is so important for kids' mental well being, especially as they grow up.
Okay, this is all fascinating, but I bet there are a lot of parents out there who are thinking, isn't this just asking for trouble?
Oh, absolutely. It's a common concern. And the article addresses it head on. The goal isn't to turn cautious kids into daredevils. Risky play should always be led by the child.
So they get to choose their challenges.
Yes, at their own pace.
So how can parents and educators tell if a child is doing healthy, risky play? What should we be looking for?
They say to pay close attention to the child's body language. What are their facial expressions saying? Do they look determined, in control? Are they willing to try again if they don't succeed at first?
So if they look focused and engaged, we should give them space.
Yeah, let them figure things out on their own.
What about the environment they play in? Does that matter?
Absolutely. You know those super safe playgrounds with all the rounded edges and soft surfaces?
Yeah.
They might not be as good as we thought. Studies show that playgrounds with more natural elements like boulders, uneven surfaces, and slopes actually encourage more positive risk taking.
Like those unpredictable natural environments give them more chances to test their limits.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if those perfectly manicured playgrounds are actually holding kids back a bit.
Wow, this is really making me think about how our worries about safety might be stopping kids from having valuable learning experiences. It's like we've become so scared of risk that we're forgetting how important it is for kids to explore, experiment, even get a little hurt sometimes.
It's a great point. And it reminds me of this story from the article about a place called the Venny. It's an adventure playground in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
So Thenny has this amazing safety record, over 40 years without a single serious accident.
Wow.
But they've had so much trouble with insurance companies dropping their coverage.
Really?
It just shows how scared people are of risk, even when the evidence shows that a well-managed approach can be really beneficial.
It's like we've forgotten how to think about risk rationally.
Yeah, we're so focused on getting rid of every possible danger that we might actually be doing more harm than good.
So advocating for risky play isn't just about changing how we parent. It's about changing our entire culture.
Absolutely. It's about challenging those deep-seated fears we have and recognizing that a little bit of risk can be a really good thing.
This is giving me a lot to think about as a parent and just as someone navigating the world.
Me too. It's a fascinating topic.
But we're not done yet. In part 2, we'll dive deeper into that research from the article and see what practical tips they have for parents and educators.
Sounds good. So, we were talking about those cultural differences in part one,
Yeah.
and it really made me think about how much our society's anxiety about safety might be stopping kids from really growing and learning.
It's like we're almost holding them back.
Yeah, and the article actually quotes a child psychologist who says that encouraging risky play isn't about making every kid a daredevil.
Right.
It's about giving them the chance to take those little risks at their own pace.
So it's more about letting them figure out their own limits.
Exactly.
Uh,
And another expert in the article says this is just as important for kids who are naturally cautious as it is for those who are more adventurous.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we balance that encouragement with keeping them safe? I'm sure a lot of parents are wondering about that.
It's a good question. And the article gives some helpful advice. They say, watch your child's face and body language as they play. They actually have a whole table in the article that researchers use to tell the difference between positive, risky play and situations that might be dangerous.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. What kind of things are they looking for?
Well, when kids are doing healthy, risky play, they usually have a determined look on their face. They seem to be in control of their movements, and they're willing to try things out even if they don't get it right the first time.
So if they look focused and like they're in control,
Yeah.
it's probably okay to let them keep going.
Yeah. The article even quotes an expert who says adults should hold back a little bit more, count to 10 before you say no,
Hmm.
give kids a chance to solve things on their own instead of jumping in to help right away.
It's about trusting them more.
Right. And remembering that risky play isn't about pushing them too far, it's about giving them a safe space to challenge themselves.
We were talking earlier about how the environment can affect risky play. Can you tell me more about that study they did on playground design?
Sure. They found that how a playground was designed had a big impact on the kinds of risky play kids did. Playgrounds with things like boulders and slopes actually encouraged more positive risk taking.
Compared to those traditional playgrounds with flat surfaces.
Yeah, it seems like those unpredictable natural environments give kids more chances to test their limits and figure out how to solve problems.
And it makes you think about those perfectly manicured playgrounds. Are they actually doing kids a disservice?
It's a good question. We were also talking about how researchers are using virtual reality to study risky play.
Yes, that was so cool. Can you remind me about that study?
Well, they've created these virtual worlds where kids can experience all kinds of risky situations, like crossing a busy street or jumping over a river.
All in a safe lab setting.
Right, so they get to experience the thrill of risky play without any real danger.
That's amazing.
And by using things like eye tracking technology and motion sensors, they can see how kids handle these virtual risks. It's giving them some really valuable information about how kids make decisions.
It's like a window into their brains.
Yeah, and as we learn more, it's becoming clear that the benefits of risky play go way beyond just physical development.
We talked about the connection between outdoor risky play and lower levels of stress and anxiety in kids. Why is that?
Well, research shows that when kids do risky play, they're actually learning how to manage their emotions. They learn that feelings of fear and excitement don't last forever and that they can handle them.
So they're building up their resilience.
Exactly. And it's interesting that this effect was even stronger for kids from lower income families.
Oh, wow. So providing access to safe and fun play areas could be especially important for kids who are facing more challenges in their lives.
Definitely. And it shows that advocating for risky play isn't just about individual parents, it's about making changes in our society as a whole.
You mentioned that different cultures see risk differently. Can you talk about that a little more?
Sure. The article talks about how different cultures have different levels of tolerance for risk. For example, Scandinavian countries tend to be much more okay with risk in kids' play than other parts of the world.
And you even mentioned Japan, where little kids are allowed to go out and run errands on their own.
It's amazing, isn't it? It shows how our ideas about risk are shaped by where we live and what we believe, more than by actual danger. It makes us question whether our fear of risk is doing more harm than good.
We've talked a lot about how important it is to let kids experience the world, even if it means they might get hurt sometimes. And that brings us back to the story about the Vinny Adventure Playground.
Yeah, that's a great example. They have an incredible safety record, but they still have problems with insurance. It just shows how deep our fear of risk goes, even when the evidence shows that a well-managed approach to risk can be really good for kids.
It reminds us that changing how our culture thinks about risk is a slow process.
But it's worth it. As we learn more about the benefits of risky play, it's important to remember that we need to support kids' natural desire to explore and challenge themselves, even if it means they might get a few scrapes along the way.
This whole deep dive has really made me think differently about risk.
Me too.
But we're not done yet. In part 3, we'll look at some of the bigger implications of these findings for parents, educators, and policymakers.
Yeah.
Welcome back. As we're wrapping this up, I'm thinking about how important it is for us as adults to make sure these opportunities for risky play actually exist for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes beyond just parents and caregivers. We need to think about how educators and people who make policies, even city planners, can create environments where kids can take healthy risks.
Yeah, that makes sense. The article talked about how our current ideas about education sometimes don't really fit with the idea of risky play.
Right. They were saying how all the emphasis on testing and structured learning can kind of stifle kids' natural curiosity and that urge to just explore the world.
It's like we're so worried about them failing that we forget that failure is a big part of learning and growing.
Exactly. And those experiences, even the ones where they get a few bumps and bruises, are so important for them to learn how to be resilient and solve problems. Those are skills they'll need their whole lives.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot between keeping them safe and giving them freedom.
Yeah, exactly. And that balance might look different in different places. Remember how we talked about how different cultures see risk?
Yeah, like how Scandinavian countries are more okay with risk and kids play than some other parts of the world.
Right. It just shows that there's no one right way to do risky play. We need to think about the needs and values of each community.
And not just try to force our own ideas on everyone else.
Exactly. This whole conversation has really shown me that encouraging risky play isn't just about changing how we parent, it's about changing our whole culture.
Yeah, we need to be pushing for policies that make play a priority and create more exciting outdoor spaces. And we need to encourage a more balanced view of risk in education.
It all starts with us looking at our own fears and realizing that a little bit of risk can actually be a good thing.
I love that phrase from the article, scary, funny joy.
Yeah.
It's that feeling you get when you push yourself a little outside your comfort zone. And, it makes you wonder, when was the last time you felt that?
That's a good question.
How can we create more opportunities for ourselves and for our kids to experience that kind of joy?
That's something we all need to think about. I think this conversation has really made us all re-examine our relationship with risk.
I hope it's given you some things to think about, too. Maybe it's time for all of us to climb that metaphorical tree, embrace the scary, funny joy, and rediscover the power of play.
That's a great way to put it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope you'll keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep playing.